Remember your suitcase that came back from a trip covered in scuffs? It looks worn, sure, but it still carries everything you need reliably. With people, we often do the opposite. One mark in their past, and the door slammed shut. My guest today, Jacob Hill, knows this firsthand. After prison, he didn't just rebuild his life, he built a way for thousands of others to do the same in the UK. So, what happens when we look past the label and see the whole person? Let's find out. Welcome to the show, Mind Blend. I'm your host, Karen Chong, and I'll be diving into the minds of incredible people, each an expert in their very own way. Together, we'll uncover insights and share ideas so you can be inspired and empowered to navigate your own unique journey in life. Ready to get curious and discover what's possible? Let's blend. All right. So today in the studio with me, air quote studio, is Jacob Hill.
Hi, Karen. Thanks for having me on the show. In the studio, the air studio.
Yeah. So, because he's physically in Venice today, but he's all over the place. He has been all over the place, and we'll find out why. So, Jacob, as I know, is a prominent entrepreneur. You're also a LinkedIn top voice advocate for specifically social value and the context of supporting individuals with criminal records.
Absolutely right.
And you're currently the founder of an organization called Offploy. And that's not the only thing you've started. And we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Amazing. I can't wait.
All right. So I want to hear from you, your journey that ultimately led you to start Offploy.
Okay. So Offploy is an organization that mentors people with criminal convictions. We, on one side, support those at risk of offending to access better opportunities in life and build on a positive future. And on the other hand, we work with employers to support them to employ that cohort. And this isn't the type of job you just you always aspire to do, or I think it's the type of thing you fall into sometimes, but maybe that's because it's non-profit, it's the social sector. And I find that with a lot of people who run social organizations, there tends to be a personal link to the mission or to the work they're doing, especially if they're the founder. And I guess what led me there was my own journey through university, the son of two police officers, having everything I ever wanted in life, being externally very successful from a camping business. Now, I know camping doesn't excite probably many people. I don't know how many people listen to this podcast get excited about it. It certainly didn't excite enough people for my business to be successful, and that camping business ultimately failed. And I made stupid and regretful choices that landed me a prison sentence related to drugs. And I was sentenced to 28 months and started off in Armley Prison. But it's one of the second highest for suicides in the UK, a really tough Victorian old age prison falling apart. And it was whilst in prison that I came up with the idea to start Offploy, and I'd happily answer any questions about that.
I want to dig into the whole experience a little bit more. So when you first know that you were going to prison, do you remember what went through your mind?
There was like one element where I was first arrested, and that was the biggest wake-up call I've had in my entire life. I was in this, not dream state, but this completely different reality where I was watching Breaking Bad and all these films and thinking that this isn't, this is the route I could go down. This is what I could do. And I could make loads of money and I can pay back my debts and I can actually be successful at something because I'm been a failure at everything else. This was what I was thinking. And then being arrested, that was like the first moment, like, oh, heck, my parents are going to find out. I'm going to lose my business completely. I'm going to embarrass a lot of prominent figures and people who've believed in and invested in me. I've thrown away all this goodwill and support I've built up over these few years. And so that for me was like the first moment of fear, thinking what is going to happen. And then you start to think what could have happened. So the could have happened could have been, okay, I could have been shot or killed or overdosed, or when I was using in all of this experience. And then you finally get to the sentencing when you find out you're going to prison.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 11 months. It took 11 months for the court cases because of the delays in the courts and et cetera, et cetera. And those 11 months were worse for me than the 9.5 months I ultimately did in prison, because I had no idea of what prison was going to be like. So I painted the absolute worst picture, expecting being attacked in the showers, expecting being beaten up every day. All of this, the 11 months of anxiety and fear, and people will listen to this and say, great, that's what you deserve. Some won't, I imagine, as well. But the anxiety and fear of going to prison for me was much worse than the prison experience, but it doesn't mean it was a good prison experience. At the point of sentencing, there was just relief that there was at least an end, or at least an end date, a point at which this would all be over, because I didn't know if I was going to be let out of the courts that day or be given a 9-year prison sentence. So to land at 2 and a bit years, almost 3, that was, it was a relief to at least know that it was going to be over soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it must have been torture, the 11 months.
We were our own worst enemies. We think of our imaginations as we've been brought up to, we are genetically wired to be scared of the dark, to understand, there's monsters and predators in there and don't go near it. The dark is an uncertain future for some people, and that can scare the heck out of people, not just those facing a prison sentence, but those with uncertainty in their life anyway.
Yeah. So I'm sure you didn't have the idea of, I'm going to start Allboy the day you entered.
No.
So did you remember how it sort of manifested?
It was in the sewing machine workshop. So my job was to sew together 200 pairs of boxer shorts every day for the prison estate. And I remember my line manager, a guy called Ralph, and Ralph was, you'd think in a prison, people don't care. And we were sewing together these 200 boxer shorts, and we were a team of 5. And we'd get qualifications with it, yes. And I was doing the hems, and then I'd move to another bit and the overlocking machine. And it was really exciting to see progression. And our line manager between the 4 or 5 of us was Ralph. And there were people who were, and Ralph was looking at every single pair of boxer short. He only had to do a 20% audit, but he was doing a 100% audit on every pair, and he was snipping the fine threads off. He had time. You have time in prison. And I was like, Ralph, why are you doing that? You have to only check 1 in 5. Why are you checking 100%? And he went, first of all, I've got all the time in the world.
Yeah.
Second of all, we are judged as a team on the quality production and output here. So every one of you plays a part in all of this. And third of all, on the first night someone gets in prison, they might have been living rough on the streets. They might have, messed their pants in the fear of the situation. They could have, whatever reason, he says, and this might be the first dignified item they get that's theirs in prison. That's neat. And it just blew me away, did this, because Ralph, before I went to prison, would have been someone that I looked down upon, someone that I thought that was a bit rough, or someone that was a drug user and all. And in prison, he was a shining example. He was someone who we would all employ. He was someone who would have absolutely, why wouldn't you want someone like Ralph? And prison for him was a way that he was clean, had structure, he had order, he had responsibility, he had root, he had all of this. And it's just like, for me, I was like, if I could just show employers people like Ralph, I think our perception of what a person with a criminal conviction would change. His offense hasn't come into this discussion or conversation, but his work ethic, his drive, his determination, his care for your product has. And I want to show more employers people like Ralph. And since starting, we've supported over 4,000 people with criminal convictions. So for me, it's absolutely amazing that the idea came from a sewing machine workshop in a prison and has now gone on to support many more people as a result of it.
Yeah, that's very noble of him. Just because he has had a conviction, just because he's in prison, doesn't mean he's rubbish.
No. Yeah, of course. And but neither are anyone else that comes in. He has no idea who those boxer shorts are going to, but he does understand the experience of how daunting the first night could be, regardless of who you are. And he's looking beyond whoever's going to use it, just more about that there's an individual that might. he was mission driven on a pair of boxer shorts, and that's what I love. Like, I just think it's like you can find it in anything. And if I could convince my bookkeeper or accountant to understand how their role is helping people with convictions get work, like Ralph understood how boxer shorts are making the prison experience better, then I'll crack it. I'll have cracked it. But I've not found that out yet. So I'm excited to keep learning from Ralph and the memory of him.
Yeah. Well, kudos to him and kudos to you for seeing there's an opportunity, there's a gap in the market, and doing something about it.
Thank you so much.
So now that you have started Offboy, I'm sure you must have seen a lot of misperception of people with convictions, whether or not they went to prison. What are some of those?
Such a good point. I mean, you have hit what it takes me hours to explain to people, that not all people with convictions are ex-prisoners. So if the listeners, right now driving in their car or they're on their commute in some way, or they're just having a moment with me, and just think about, when you hear people with convictions, when you hear ex-offender, what image comes to mind?
Criminals.
Dangerous
people.
Dangerous people.
Yeah.
I pictured 6 foot tall, skinheads, scar down the face, missing teeth, tattooed knuckles with love and hate on either side. This was my image of an ex-offender before I went to prison. I'm the son of 2 police officers. I've only ever seen the Shawshank Redemption, Prison Break, Orange is the New Black to shape my idea of what a person with a criminal conviction is. I only know the notorious headlines from the newspapers of the worst criminals that go to prison, because that sells newspapers.
Yeah.
What we don't think about is that 1 in 4 adults in the UK, so 25% of our working age population, has a criminal conviction. Over 50% of 25%.
Wow.
You are walking around amongst 12.6 million people with convictions.
Wow.
Over 50% are for driving related offences. And for our colleagues in their cars today listening away, that even speeding points counts as a criminal conviction. But I know that that's not what people think about when they think of people with convictions.
Yeah.
And when they say we wouldn't hire them as a company, for example, they would say, well, obviously that doesn't include driving convictions.
Yeah.
But the number of violence offences are incredibly low. It's within the less than 10% when we think about people who are kind of in prisons. And when we think about people with criminal convictions, it's such a broad range of people that it could be anything from fraud related right through to challenging offences that I know we all might come to mind. And only 8% of people are sentenced to prison in the UK every year. 92% of people get community sentences.
Okay.
So the first thing we do is the big perceptions we have to challenge is that, 1, people with convictions represent almost everyone. And 2, we need to stop thinking about them as a group of people with convictions, but start to hear like Jacob's story, Ralph's story, and start to recognize it could be someone in your family, it could be someone you know down the street, and not necessarily people that mean you or will cause you harm. So for us, we've got to do a lot of perception changing around that, Karen, for sure.
So do you work with both people with convictions and employers?
Yes, we're both sides of the fence, to use a jail-related pun. But we very much, on one side, sit with corporates and large organizations to help them make employing people with convictions business as usual. And I'll say business as usual because it's not just about hiring people with convictions. It's about supporting them what happens when existing get a conviction. We work with one employer that has 30,000 staff, one that has 10,000 staff, and you picture those statistics of 1 in 4 adults of working age has a conviction. These big companies cannot afford to have a blanket ban on people with convictions. They would lose all of a large portion of their talent. So yes, we work with employers on one side, and then our team of amazing mentors, 7 in 10 of them, also have a conviction themselves out of our mentors. We'll take individuals who are at risk of offending, not just those who have been convicted, and take them through a 9-step transformative journey to achieving their life goals.
So, side note, have you heard of this coffee company called Redemption
Roasters
in London? Yeah,
I have. It started by an incredible human called Max Dubiel, and there's now 12 or something coffee shops across London, as well as as well as roasteries inside the prison. So Max has absolutely shown how business is not just doing good, it's good for business.
Mm-hmm.
If you are walking around London, look for your nearest Redemption
Yeah.
Roasters and grab yourself
Yeah.
a little espresso. It's coffee
Yeah.
as well.
There's one 10 minutes from me. Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's so good. And I bet the service is amazing when you go there. Max really cares about the quality of the
Yeah.
coffee. We can no longer run social enterprises and assume that the value comes from the social element. You still need to produce a really high quality
Yeah.
product. You still need to, and you can command a higher price point because of the social value. Don't think people will come back if the quality is really poor, and that's what I love about Redemption Roasters. It's good value and good quality as well.
Do you place people with convictions to jobs?
We are like passing ships in the night when we look at our cohort of people we mentor and the cohort of employers we support. We teach both sides how to fish, and we don't always broker the opportunity in the middle. There are some amazing brokerage organizations out there, and sometimes we do it based on the fact it's really convenient. But what I find is a lot of employers need people yesterday, and a lot of individuals with convictions need a bit of time to prepare for a job. And it doesn't always mutually add up, and it's not always convenient. What I will say is that what employers spend on recruitment agencies, where they spend 2 to 5 to 10,000 or percentages, I would say invest in a social organization who are offering inclusion of some form amongst a socially excluded group, not just people with convictions. Because they tend to find great candidates. They'll mentor them in work support. You'll see the retention go through the roof. I'd rather employers invest in that than potentially in recruitment agencies.
Kind of short term if you just place them.
Yeah, and then you're looking like, what, a 12-week rebate period and all. It seems a bit mad to me. So for me, the mentoring for anyone with a conviction or any social exclusion has to be optional. Just because you are someone with a conviction does not mean you need extra mentoring and support. But if you want it, it should be available to you. Fine. But then you say, well, why draw the line at people who have got some form of social exclusion? What could we offer to all our colleagues who might need that little bit of extra, especially if we want to invest and see that individual with us in 2, 3, 4 years' time?
Yeah, and I like that you are thinking about the environments the employment environment. Just because someone got a job, there's no guarantee that they would not be bullied or discriminated against when they're on the job. So what has been the most successful case you've seen?
We've seen people with convictions go across a whole range of roles when I think about it. And I think people with convictions go straight into like fast moving consumer goods or construction work, etc. We've got a client whose lead project manager who's running this incredible project for people with convictions is a person with a criminal conviction, and you wouldn't like that's phenomenal to see. It is literally the organization going, right, we've got tens of thousands of staff, we want to make employing people with convictions business as usual. Yes, they're working with us as an organization, but they've appointed their project lead as someone with a conviction, and their offense it's finance related, fine, but it's more of about the fact that they've said we can only make this work with the voice of lived experience at the heart of it. So that's obviously like what I would say is one of the most successful and self-healing roles I've ever seen a client appoint. Yeah. But we've got stories of people who, for example, have been rough sleeping on the street. Are a picture of a candidate that we supported in the southwest of the country. They were sleeping behind a football stadium every night, and they were part of the benefits system, and they were trying to access it all, but the government got in touch with us and said, can you provide mentoring and support to this individual? And one of our team members went and supported them, and it was meeting them like where they were, bringing them into town for the day, sorting out their bus fare, buying them a coffee, a meal, having a chat with them, building up that rapport and relationship, because the solution to homelessness isn't necessarily just getting someone a house. There's other bits that are going on in people's lives to bring them there and meet them halfway where they are, and start to look at kind of the future with where they want to be. Very few people get asked, where do you want to be? Often when you go through government services, it's typically filling a function. It's balancing a ledger from, okay, you're a person on benefits, I need to get you from this intensive benefit to a less intensive benefit to employment. You then go pay taxes, and we are happy as a government, it's checked. And it's like, we can do that. but it's a sugar high, and eventually we will crash. So we've got to, for me, hearing about the guy that moved from behind the stadium to secured accommodation was phenomenal. I'll have to follow up to see whether he ended up going into work, but for us just to even see him progress through that means we had an impact. And I bet you there was crime involved in that lifestyle, because to survive, it's pretty difficult out there. So for us, I like the idea that society's being made safer, yes, but that individual's probably feeling a heck of a lot happier in their life right now. And hats off to our team for doing that and meeting that individual and building that support pack and feeling less governmenty. We're kind of like an arm's length service there. We're a bit more socially focused than potentially someone who has to work behind a desk in the government and deal with a caseload of 200 people.
Yeah, you're not just doing this because you have to. It's not the mandatory programs that people get put on. You want them to be able to be on their feet again.
Yeah. I like the idea that we know what the government wants when they commission our services. So that's the box ticking part. But I say, let's tick the box, fill it with hope, and then give it to the candidate, to the person we're supporting. And that's kind of that's the extra added value for our commissioners, but we don't do that for them. The added value for us is that the individual feels that they're on the right path, and ultimately they don't need off-ploy services because they've found independence and sustainability in their own life.
Yeah, and this is what inclusive hiring is about. It's not just conviction, it's many other aspects, demographic, social background, all those. What's the biggest education you have had to do when you're approaching a new company that you want to get involved with?
The big thing is a question we've already covered, which is around the perception of what a person with a criminal conviction is. But to go down to the inclusivity route is that it's a high tide rises many ships, and what you do for one socially excluded group might actually improve it for everyone, not just those who are socially excluded. You might ask questions differently to be more accommodating for people who declare they have a sight or auditory challenge. Fine. But those that don't declare it also benefit from you being a bit more clearer in the way you handle your questioning processes or the way you disseminate information. There's nothing wrong with saying, let's make all of our text to the reading age of an 11-year-old, because that's where, for example, most prisoners stopped learning. But it would also benefit people who do have additional needs when it comes to reading, writing, understanding, who might never talk about the fact that they can't spell their own name. I'm sure they can, but I'm saying that there's so much that we see, and that is just the tip of the iceberg. So for me, when I go through an inclusive approach, it's that idea of when employers say, we're nervous about employing people with convictions, but we're going to run this homeless support project over here. I will say, well, how many of those homeless people do you think don't have convictions? Because a conviction is often a symptom of a social exclusion. If in most cases, there's the majority of people get involved with crime through despair and desperation. Yes, there's evil people, and yes, there's stupid people and those who make mistakes. But I will say the majority of actions come from people in poverty, people facing addiction challenges, people facing prior abuse, leaving the care system. All people that on an individual social exclusion basis, you would say, well, of course we should support them. But as soon as you wrap it all up into a neat little criminal conviction, it also challenges people. So 2 bits to answer that question. One is that when you support any social exclusion, you make it easier for everyone, even those without declared or without social exclusions, you make it better. And the second part is that when you support people with convictions, you are supporting multiple social exclusions, and it's a two-way street.
Yeah, I'm sure it's everyone has their own prejudice inside. So whether or not they review it, they are probably secretly rejecting the candidate because he or she has a conviction. So I can understand that, because people are not familiar with what that really means, like what that person's past has to do with what they are doing. And I think it also has to do with what the role is, really. Right?
Have you been doing our courses? Like, you are, like, so first of all, thank you so much for saying that out loud. I think it's tough to say I have prejudice and biases, and I think we're all scared to admit those things, and that's a great place to start with employers. People will say there are certain convictions that turn my stomach and I would never employ someone with that, and they might only ever say it in their own head, and I would love for them to say it out loud. I would love for them to say it in a room full of their peers, maybe people in their organization or at their role level in their professional industry, not to be shot down, nor to create an echo chamber, but first to hear what it sounds like out loud.
Yeah.
And then second of all, say it in the presence of a professional. I know it sounds like therapy, but say it in the presence of me, for example, because for every conviction, I will give you an individual that you would still employ, because you would say, actually, yeah, I understand that circumstance now. I understand. Oh, they're not, people, the abused wife who gets done for manslaughter after, years of abuse, or the 2 17-year-olds in love in a couple that share images of each other, and then one of them gets done for distributing child pornography because they've taken a picture of their girlfriend or boyfriend, or there's all these niches and examples that you could see it the other way. So first of all, thank you for kind of admitting prejudice exists within you, within all of us, and that side of it all. But you are right. We need to consider the risk of the role first, and then the risk of the individual afterwards. That's how you start to say, do we even need to know about convictions for these roles? Does it really matter? And that's the type of work we do with employers, to help them say, okay, if we are lifting a piece of wood on site, how do we prevent a splinter? And you would say, right, well, ensure that, we lift in with machinery, ensure that people have got gloves on, this, that, the other. It's the same with, if we're managing money in a finance director role, how do we stop any person from committing fraud in that role? And let's have 2 people sign off on every bank transaction. Let's do this, let's do that, the other. And then maybe the fraud conviction never really comes into it. There's a reputational risk, yes, but a risk of harm and damage, much less when you actually start to say, what processes can we put in place, not to prevent the people with convictions from damaging us, but to prevent anyone in the role, because you don't start out in life as someone with a conviction.
Yeah. And it's not to mention their wrongful convictions too.
True. I don't know what the percentages are, but I imagine it's very, very small, the numbers. But yes.
Like, I'm sure they exist.
Yeah. And there was a guy who was recently acquitted. I should know his name. It's such a huge case in the UK. And not only was he acquitted after so many years in prison, but then the Ministry of Justice tried to charge him board and lodgings for the time that he was in the prison.
Oh, I haven't heard about that.
You've seen this? Thankfully, he kicked up a bit of a stink and society supported him, and that was overturned. That's disgusting. That's criminal behaviour, if you ask me. I just think, like, we need to compensate that poor chap. So there are wrongful convictions. It's not how we build our processes, because as an employer, it's not your job to judge on someone's conviction. It's your job to judge on the suitability of the role and the risk of reputation to you as an employer. So what you have to take is someone's conviction in front of you, not necessarily someone's plea of innocence. You have no right, no recourse, no support for that individual. If they say, I was convicted of this, but I didn't do it, it's like, brutally, I've got to deal with the conviction in front of me, not your plea.
Yeah. It's not in the consideration that the employers need to. You don't need to go into that.
Exactly. But you might want to consider what a role would do for their future. And that's what you should do with anyone, not just for people with convictions. And when I'm asking people to disclose their offence to me, I will go through a list of questions that help me understand where they were at the time of their offence, what punishment they received, what they did with their time during their punishment or as a result of their punishment. None of this says, were you guilty? Did you do it? And then more importantly, what could a job do for you right now, and how will that, what will that do for your future, and what's your big motivation? And you find many people go, I actually just want an opportunity because I want to be able to get my own place and move out of this shared accommodation, and therefore I'll be able to get my children back in my life because I can demonstrate. If you imagine employing someone with that much motivation, with that deep of a motivation, there's a reason why Timson, for example, the big shoe cobbler, sees 74% retention after 12 months in a retail role. That's huge for retail.
Yeah. And they would have a certain degree of loyalty too, because it's not easy for them to get a job.
Yeah, exactly. And that loyalty, it shines through. It shines through in my organization with the people we employ, but also with the people we support. When you get them into work, they couldn't be more grateful. Imagine employing someone who's done, I'm using prisoners as an example, but anyone who's lost the job, had a label applied to them, faced the stigma of society, and they're still putting 200 applications in a day, getting rejected, and they still turn up to you, they still look at that interview, they still take the opportunity. Why wouldn't you take someone who's that determined to move on from their past? Like, who are we not to? And knowing that, giving them that chance is, on one side, there's loyalty, but on the other side, their conviction is disclosable for a certain amount of time, if there is. And they'll stick with you at least for that time. For me, it was my full sentence, 28 months plus 4 years. Imagine that length of loyalty and retention where I don't have to go and disclose to another employer in the next 4 years when my offence is spent, then I might move on. But if you had someone with you for 6 years or so, they've probably progressed, they're probably doing really well, they probably want to stick around for a career, which I don't think many people do nowadays. So it's nice to think that people with convictions might be that untapped pool, really.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of encouraging people who are hiring to be a little bit more open-minded, see beyond the CV, see what this person can do based on what they have done. And in this case, it's a little bit different. You probably don't want to focus on what they have done.
You're a drug dealer, you're excellent at sales. It doesn't have to be that way, but there is transferable skills from crime, and there's also transferable in terms of leadership, etc. But there's that vulnerability that someone's giving you the most shameful part of their life, and you will know more about this individual than you will than anyone. For those who don't have convictions, they have skeletons in their closet that would never be brought up with an employer. When you disclose a conviction, you tend to talk about the most shameful part of your life and how you got there and the journey out and back from that. For me, it's an interviewing superpower. If it can be used in the right way and the employer doesn't go blank, like white in the face and jump out the nearest window out of fear. There's certainly, I think there's a story to tell with every conviction, and that is an interviewing superpower. And then you look at, if people do go to prison, or if people do get community sentences, what have they done with their time during then? So I've never I'm now a level 2 seamstress for any employers listening that want me to come and stitch some bits together. I can do that, no problem, thanks to my time in prison. But what else is done in prisons? There's people who run courses for prisoners as prisoners. There's people who run cleaning and do all the qualifications needed for cleaning. There's people who learn IT skills. There's so much that we could tap into if we just opened our hearts and stopped doing it not doing it from a fear perspective, but started looking at it from a curious perspective.
Yeah. And if anyone who needs attention to details, hire Ralph.
Hire Ralph. I mean, the quality, the quality checking there, and the guy who knew what every person's role was. It's what you'd want in any colleague, in any employee. And to know that they stick around, it goes such a long way. The biggest barrier is the perception of themselves and your perception of them. And that's all we really need to work on.
Yeah. And I know you're now also on the board of the Institute for Social Value.
Yes, I can't believe they appointed me. I was socially value driven. As an organization, we mentor and support people. It generates savings for society. It makes your street safer to you listening to this show today. But my only board experience is in my own organization, and running your own organization and having a board of people that you appoint, and you're the founder and you're the one that pays everyone's salaries, is so different to being a volunteer on a board of people who you look up to and you don't feel you're adequately good enough for. Like, I did not feel, I was like, why did they appoint me? And I still had this little chip on my shoulder. I'm a token hire. I'm a person with a criminal conviction. And that's the only ism I've ever had in my life, by the way. I'm very aware of my privilege and who I am and all this, that, the other. And I put myself into social exclusion by getting a criminal conviction. But once you've got that, the fact that you feel the hire was related purely to the conviction, or the fact that everyone in the room knows, or the fact it was daunting. But to be part of influencing the conversation on how society makes decisions based on social value, how employers do that, for me, that's super exciting.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what the Institute does?
Absolutely. So the Institute is working to be the beacon of social value throughout the United Kingdom. Through the Institute of Social Value, it's super exciting. I mean, under the leadership of Isabel Parasram, she is a force of nature. She has absolutely taken this organization from Social Value UK to achieving the Institute status. And our ambition as an organization is to be that central hub for anyone interested in social value and decisions making on social value. So here are all the tools, platforms, software you can use. Here's how the best way to measure social value based on 3 different thought pieces and opinions. Here's the basic level, what social value is, what social return investment is. Here is the government's ambitions for it and how we should be influencing that conversation. So it's a membership organization for those who believe in the social value space. And I cannot tell you for me, it's a beautiful crossing of worlds, because Ofploy's main customer are social value leaders, employers who work in the social value space, who have to demonstrate that they are making an impact on society. And a lot of the way to demonstrate that is through financial metrics, or what's called social return on investment. As a very quick example, when you employ a person with a conviction for 12 months, you are generating around £24,527, give or take, of savings for society, of social return on investment. So I'm loving that my two worlds are kind of merging on this at the moment. But amazing to be part of something that is so, I think it's going to become a cornerstone for British decision making on social value. And I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I'm really glad that the Institute exists, because in order for any company, profit, nonprofit, for them to even consider this, they need to justify it. They need to talk to their decision makers, board members. And so I'm glad there's something quantifiable that you're now able to show.
That's so true. It helps people compare apples and oranges. But even then, I will say, there's always a caveat for any of my social impact colleagues listening, how one person gets to their total impact and total figures and how another one does it, or how one organization does it. There's always ways to move the sliders on attribution or dead weight or whatever it might be across the board. But it at least I think it gives the purse string holders a justification for doing social good. And it stops it being around the businesses doing good, but actually being good for businesses.
So I'm like, our conversation today is not to say that all companies should just hire people with conviction. We are trying to help everyone to have an open mind. Right? If you were to sum up what you want people to take away from our conversation today, what would it be?
I want you to take one more pause and think about, okay, what is my image of someone with a criminal conviction? And then start to realize it could be people, it could be anyone among society. It could be, and a person with a conviction isn't necessarily always someone that has intently taken from society or intently causing damage. It's someone who went down a path due to a number of reasons in life. As I say, from pure evil to poor decision making, but majority is for desperation and challenges there. I'm not asking for a sob story or that people with convictions need pity, but I will say that if they're on a journey of rehabilitation and wanting to contribute to society, either support them or at least get out of the way. Don't beat people down, push them down further. They have been through something. They want to progress. They want to be part of society. It could be your nephew. It could be your neighbor. It could be someone that you just pass by on the street. These celebrities who have convictions, from Stephen Fry to Hugh Grant. And I really want us to challenge ourselves that people with convictions do move on in life. They do contribute. They do make us laugh. We do fall in love with them. We do, they do pay taxes. They do earn their place back, but we've got to stop getting in their way or really start supporting them if they want to do it. And just a massive thank you, Karen, for this platform and opportunity, and to your audience who will be considering something different now, I hope, who won't think of the Shawshank Redemption next time they hear the newspaper say lags, did riot in prison. I like the idea that people will start to say, okay, there's people out there who have a label applied and it doesn't represent everyone based on that label. That does not mean one type of person. That's not just convictions. That's just the entire spectrum of diversity in our world, and let's do less labels and more individuals.
Yeah, individuals is very important. And listeners, I can tell you that Jacob doesn't look like what you would imagine. he looks nothing like what he described as people's perception of criminals.
Still got some hair.
Now let's play something fun, something more on the individual level, so we can know you a little bit better.
Okay.
Just gut reaction. So first one, who's someone who gave you a second chance that you'll never forget?
My investor, Nigel. I was released from prison and I pitched to him in a pair of jeans that had a hole in the crotch. I was sweating, I was shaking, and he asked me, are you still using drugs, based on the fact of how I was? And I said I wasn't, and he went, okay. And 2 weeks after release from prison, he shook my hand, gave me an £18,000 salary and gave me £18,000 to start off Ploy. Because of him, we're now a $1 million+ turnover organisation supporting 1,000 people a year. I love that man. I'm so grateful to him. He was a perfect stranger on the day I was released. And
wow.
He gave me a chance 2 weeks after. We set off Ploy up 6 weeks after.
Wow. Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you, Nigel.
For making this happen.
Yeah, all him.
Okay, next one. When you're not changing lives, where would we find you on a day off?
Now, I've just recently had a baby, and someone asked me what my hobbies are. At the moment, it's changing nappies, for sure. But I really love hiking. I cannot get enough. So I met my wife on the Camino de Santiago. We live in Italy, and now every weekend we spend, before this baby came along, every weekend we used to hike the Via Francigena, which is a walk that starts in Canterbury in England and goes all the way to the Vatican in Rome and then keeps going south to the bottom of Italy. So every weekend from Rome, we would walk 2 days and then get the train back. And then the next weekend, get the train to the last point and then keep walking 2 days and get the train back. I love that. I absolutely love that. And so when our little boy can put his back up and sit upright in a couple of months, he'll be joining us and we'll be continuing our Camino, at least with more time now, rather than just weekends, since we're both on paternity and maternity.
Wow. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Okay. Are you a snack person?
Yes, and I'm trying to cut back. I love sweet stuff and I can't help it. So now I'm changing my chocolate bars for medjool dates and sweet pick and mix stuff. That is like dried fruits. So I'm very boring as a snack person, unfortunately. But I admit I am a snacker and will always pick up a sweet tooth wherever I can.
Me too, especially when I need to solve some problems.
Exactly. Solve problems and self-soothe. It is straight to the Kit Kat.
Me too. Next one. You have worked with thousands of people turning their lives around. What's a small everyday win that will always make you smile?
When someone answers the call, when they attend their appointment. I could talk in numbers that our attendance has gone up from 50 to 86%. But it's that 14%. That's the hard bit, when they don't turn up to the call, when whatever reason, whatever excuse they've got in their life, they can't make it or they don't want to commit to Offploy's mentoring and support. But the ones that do, that is a win every day, because it's like, cool, we've just done something. Like you've shown someone that they can turn up, they can commit to something, but that they can invest in themselves. And I absolutely love seeing that and hearing that.
Yeah, I can understand that. You are making an impact on someone's life.
They're making one on themselves, so this is more importantly.
Yeah. Last one. How do you think your cellmate will describe you?
Well, he was called Mr. Big. So he might... Sorry, I just snorted then. So he might... But the only type of Mr. Big I'd heard beforehand, I think, was from Sex and the City. So for me, that gives you an example of how I was going to get on in prison, right? I think he would have described me as meek. The Bible says the meek will inherit the earth, I believe. So that's also a good thing. I don't know. I think he'd have called me a soft lad. Not really sure. He says he just kept calling me Richard Branson because I won an award off him, and that was his only reference. He thought I was posh. I promise you, I'm not posh. I hope now he'd describe me as someone who, for all of it, it was worth it. And I mean, that guy was phenomenal. I was terrified of him when I first saw him. But he taught me so much. He taught me how to clean. Like, I never knew how to clean before. And he was like, look, I clean the cell like this. And he would get on his hands and knees, this big burly guy who was like, obviously a very serious gang member. And he would be the first one to clean the cell immaculately. He would sit, get on his hands and knees, and he'd wipe the floor with, rather than using a mop, he'd say, it's better to do it. And we'd take it in turns every week to do one clean, another clean. Absolutely amazing human. Taught me so much around how to make a shelf out of your drawers, how to make glue that's concretes and cements to the wall out of the coffee whitener that they give you. All these different skills. I know, right? But that's, again, goes back to the ingenuity with, necessity is the mother of innovation. It is literally, it's phenomenal to see what's in there. So I hope he'd say that it was all worth it. But yeah, what a great guy he was as well, Mr. Big.
Yeah, great. It's always better to have a clean cellmate.
And that's what he said. That's the reason he advocated to the prison staff that out of all the options, give me the posh kid, he said. So there you go. And I thought he wanted me for something else. So I was really glad it was just for a clean cell.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today, Jacob. I know it was some heavy topics that we were discussing. So I really, really appreciate your openness, sharing your story, doing what you're doing, and just opening people's minds.
You're the one that makes this platform possible. So thank you, Karen, and thank you to the Mindblend podcast for doing that. And huge thanks to the audience for listening through it all today.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of Mindblend. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to follow and share it with anyone who needs to hear it. And let's keep the conversation going. Connect with me on LinkedIn or leave me a comment. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and let's continue to blend our minds and discover what's possible.